A serial killer comes about by circumstances. Unlike a recipe, poverty, drugs, child abuse, these things, contribute to a person's frustration and anger, and at some point in life, he explodes. These are the words spoken by convicted serial killer Richard Ramirez during an interview with CBS's Inside Edition in 1993 regarding his thoughts on what creates a serial killer. According to criminal behaviorist William Harmoning, there are 3 psychological development processes: attachment, moral development, and identity formation that occur between infancy and adolescence. Any disruption can lead to the development of a criminal personality type. In other words, negative events in the beginning of a person's life may shape who they will become. This theory can be explored by examining Richard Ramirez's early years, his crimes, and his capture to determine if these psychological processes did shape who he became. Richard Leyva Munoz Ramirez was born on February 29, 1960, to parents Mercedes and Julian Ramirez. He was the youngest of 5 children. While pregnant, his mother worked in a factory and was exposed to chemicals. At the age of 2, a dresser fell on his head, causing trauma. At the age of 5, he suffered another head injury when a swing struck him and he fell unconscious. After that, he began having epileptic seizures and cognitive problems. In his book, The Night Stalker: The Life and Crimes of Richard Ramirez, author Philip Carlo details over 100 hours of conversations with Richard, in which he claims his father was physically abusive. In order to escape from this environment, he began hanging out with his cousin Miguel, who was a Vietnam War veteran. Richard claims that his cousin exposed him to stories and pictures detailing the mutilation and assaults of several Vietnamese women. At the age of 13, Richard witnessed his cousin murder his wife. Not long after, Richard began using drugs and learning how to pick locks and break into homes. He spent time committing burglaries and was known as Ricky the Klepto and Fingers. He was sent to Texas and was living in a youth camp for juveniles until his release in 1977. He dropped out of high school in 9th grade and moved to Los Angeles in 1978. From 1978 to 1984, Richard was arrested numerous times with crimes ranging from possession, breaking and entering, theft, and auto theft. He also began to worship Satan. In June of 1984, Richard committed his first murder. He entered the home of 79-year-old Jenny Vincow, and while she slept, stabbed her and then sexually assaulted her corpse. His second murder occurred in March of 1985 when he shot and killed Dale Okazaki. 3 days later, he murdered an 8-year-old girl. Later that same month, Richard shot and killed Vincent Zazzara and his wife Maxine. He carved a T on her left breast and gouged out her eyes. A few months later, in May of 1985, he murdered 83-year-old Malville Keller and critically wounded her sister. The next day, he tortured and raped 41-year-old Ruth Wilson while her son was locked in a closet. In June of 1985, he sexually assaulted a 6-year-old girl and beat and slit the throat of 32-year-old Patty Higgins. In July of 1985, Richard murdered 75-year-old Mary Cannon, beat 16-year-old Deirdre Palmer with a tire iron nearly to death, beat 61-year-old Lucille Nelson to death, and shot and mutilated Maxon Kneeling and his wife Lena. In August of 1985, he shot Christopher Peterson and his wife in the head, but both survived. He then shot Ahmed Zia and raped his wife Sue. After traveling back to LA, he shot Bill Carnes in the head, raped his wife Inez, and spoke the famous words, "Swear your love to Satan," during this attack. She survived, and was able to identify the car he was driving. With this information and the eyewitnesses that were able to give the license plate number, the police tracked down the car and lifted a fingerprint which was matched to Richard Ramirez. They then released a picture to the public, and on August 31st, 1985, Richard Ramirez was recognized and apprehended by citizens when he attempted to steal a car. Jury selection began in 1988. His trial began in January of 1989. In September 1989, Richard Ramirez was found guilty of 43 charges, including 13 murder, 5 attempted murder, 11 sexual assault, and 14 burglary. He was sentenced to die by gas chamber on November 11th, 1989. He stated, "Hey, big deal. Death always comes with the territory. I'll see you in Disneyland." Richard spent the next 24 years on San Quentin's death row, appealing his verdict. While there, he corresponded with and married one of his supporters named Doreen Leoy. His appeal was rejected in 2006, and in 2013, Richard Ramirez died of natural causes from complications of B-cell lymphoma at age 53. The life, crimes, and capture of Richard Ramirez may be attributed to his harsh start in life, and perhaps the head trauma and abuse he suffered at an early age. Like many other criminals, his early years were full of cruelty at the hands of people he was supposed to trust. In his own words, "I believe in the evil of human nature. This is a wicked world, and in a wicked world, wicked people are born."